Welcome to the ERC webinar on the lump sum funding model for the Advanced Grants 2024 call. We are here in sunny Brussels in the headquarters of the ERC Executive Agency. My name is Josefina Enfedaque. I'm the head of the Call and Project Follow-up Coordination Unit in the Executive Agency. And with me I have two colleagues, Mila from the head of the Granting Department and Angela Wittelsberger from the Scientific Department. First, I'm going to ask you, Mila, to explain us what does the Granting Department and what is the role on the lump sums in the webinar today.
Okay, good morning, Josefina.
Good morning.
Indeed, I'm leading this granting department of the ERC Executive Agency. And what are we doing? First, the first thing we are doing is to prepare the grant agreement that has to be signed with the host institution of the successful principal investigators after the evaluation. And then we do the whole follow-up of the project from a legal, financial, and administrative, in general, point of view. This includes amendments and payments, of course, which is very important. And then additionally, and this is an important activity also, we organize trainings for host institutions and principal investigators on all those matters. We do this in collaboration with the scientific department, of course. And how can I help you to understand this lump sum model? Okay, I have been working over 20 years on the management of EU funds related to research. And I have been very deeply involved in the development of the lump sum model. So let's see how it goes in the webinar.
Thank you, Mila. And Angela, you come from the Scientific Department. Could you explain us a little bit more about the role and your own role?
Yes, of course. I am head of sector in the scientific department in the life sciences unit. The scientific department has two main core responsibilities. The first is to organize the calls for proposals and the evaluation of proposals received. And the second is that we follow up projects during their lifetime. We assess the midterm and the scientific reports when they're submitted by grantees, and we get involved whenever there's a need for a scientific opinion, such as in cases where there's a significant change or an amendment to the project. In addition, we're also involved in communication and dissemination activities. The scientific officers from the department, they regularly go and attend scientific conferences. They present about the ERC and the funding opportunities.
Thank you. This seminar is intended to provide information and to answer your questions about this new funding model from any point of view. Questions from applicants, from research institutions, and in general to all those who help or support the preparation of research proposals for this call. Well, this is a live webinar. You can ask the questions in the chat. Some will be answered by colleagues on the chat. Some will be passed to us and we can have the opportunity to answer them live, but be reassured we are recording this seminar and we will answer in writing all the questions and we will post them later on. You can also see in the description useful links where there are questions and answers that will be updated. So my first question is for you, Angela. We are focusing on lump sums now because this is the big novelty of the Advanced Grants call. But is there everything that we need to know and all the novelties for this call?
No, indeed, it's not. We are focusing today on the lump sum model at the ERC, but it is important to note that this is only one of the changes that were introduced in the Work Programme 2024. As applicants, so for the principal investigators among the audience today, we strongly invite you to familiarize yourself with all changes that were introduced by the Scientific Council in the current work program. Because some of these changes, like for example, a clearer focus on the research project or a more structured, different in the structure of the curriculum vitae and the track record, might be important for you and to know. But they were the topic
today about lump sums. Could you give us an overall structure of this webinar, of the sections?
Of course. Let's go for the webinar. So we are going to talk, about the lump sums. We will go first for the general principles, then we will see all the procedures. We will go for the proposal submission, then the evaluation, the implementation and payments, and we will end up, of course, with a conclusion and a wrap-up of all the things we have been talking about, okay? So let's start already with the general principles. First, I would like to tell you that there are two lump sum models, two main lump sum models. One is when we have the lump sum fixed work program or call for proposals, and this is the model we are following for the proof of concept in ERC since 2019. Sorry, 2019. But today we are going to focus on the lump sum that is fixed during the evaluation, that is fixed according to the budget that is presented in the proposal, the budget that is related to the activities that the project is going to carry out. And this is what we are going to use. This is the model for Advanced Grants 2024, and we are going to focus on that. What are the general principles for this lump sum model? So, as I said, first, the proposals will include a budget that is based on the estimated costs that are related to the activities that are in the proposal. Like today, you do already this for the actual cost model. So you have to have the proposal, we have to have the cost with the related activities. Then this budget will be assessed during the evaluation. And what are the evaluators are going to assess? They're going to assess if the resources that are in this budget are needed for the activities, and if the cost of those resources that you have put in the budget are reasonable. Then this lump sum will be defined on a project-by-project basis. But remember that for the ERC, we have a ceiling, and this ceiling for the advanced grant is 2.5 million. You could have an extra 1 million of additional funding. It's very well justified, and these are the ceilings that we have. We cannot give you more than this. Then once it is done, it is in the grant agreement, and then how are we going to pay? The payment is based on the work completion, the activities, the work that is described in the annex to the grant agreement now have to be carried out. But it is not linked to a successful outcome. It does not need to be successful. It's an obligation of means, as we say in law. It's not an obligation of results. Then good news, very good news, no financial report anymore. So you don't have to submit any more cost claims, and we are not going to ask for timesheets. Then something very important in the lump sum for advanced grants for the ERC is that we are going to have a single lump sum contribution for the entirety of the project. We are not going to divide the lump sum. We are not going to have lump sums per work packages. I said this because in other programs, and maybe you have the experience, they have a lump sum per work package. Here is a lump sum for the whole project. Of course, normally in the ERC grants, we have a mono beneficiary. What we call is only the host institution that is signing, but it's not the only case. We have cases where we have secondary beneficiaries because we have team members that are working in other entities. In those cases, we will have a lump sum per beneficiary, but for the whole project. Something very important also, very important, and this is, we are stressing this all the time, no changes in the evaluation criteria. The unique evaluation criteria is the scientific excellence. And of course, portability is still possible like today, except for the final reporting and payment processes. All other processes are very, very similar to what we have today in the actual cost. So the evaluation criteria identical, we have already said, scientific reporting, project amendments, this won't change.
The European Research Council funds groundbreaking and ambitious research based on one sole criterion, and that is excellence. So what we're talking about today is a new financial model for dealing with budget and finance aspects of ERC grants. But it has no impact on the basic principles governing the ERC mission and objectives. The ERC will continue to fund groundbreaking and ambitious research based on one sole criterion: excellence. So the evaluation criteria, the principles of flexibility and serendipity will not change. We know that frontier research does not go exactly as planned, and we will continue to be as flexible as we were in the past with changes to deviations to the original work plan. And then, as mentioned by Mila, the principle of portability, that is the right of a principal investigator to transfer their grant to a different host institution, remains valid.
Thank you.
So the
Yes.
important message here is applicants should not change the way they think or develop their project. And they also should not change the way they think about structuring their project, because this remains the same. They can structure their project as they see fit, with or without scientific work packages.
This is a very, very good message to say. We can, this is the first generic block, the generic section, and we can take some questions from the audience, and I'm still waiting for my colleagues to transmit them to me, but first I have a couple of questions already. Mila, you mentioned that the payment will be based on work completion, not linked to results, but focus on the work conducted. Could you explain a little bit more this is frontier research? Maybe the two of you could give me also an example. How is it working?
Yes. In fact, this does not change. Is like today, the grant agreements that we are signing are based on obligations, but they should not, it's not necessary that they get the result that was expected when they did the proposal. They have to carry out the work. And I can give you several examples, but I prefer Angela gives you one example because she is closer to the project.
Okay, I can give one example. Imagine you had a new hypothesis in relation to an infectious disease that may lead to a novel vaccine candidate. So you present this hypothesis in your project, and you present the work that you would do to test that hypothesis, with the goal to have a potential vaccine candidate at the end of your project. Now you start your project and you discover all sorts of scientific challenges. Things turn out to be not as straightforward as you might have hoped for. So at the end of the 5 years, you don't have a novel vaccine candidate, but you have perhaps achieved certain steps towards that goal. You might even have realized that your hypothesis was entirely wrong, and that the whole way forward does not need to be further pursued. But you still have carried out the work. You have done the work, and it can therefore be considered as completed, and the lump sum can be paid.
And regarding to payment, we have received some questions about the payments. One is asking, will the pre-financing principle stay the same? And the other one that is linked to this is the single lump sum contribution will be 100% of the budget at the start of the grant. So what are the pre-financing? I know that we have another block later, but it could be a very quick answer now.
Yes, the very quick answer is that we will have a pre-financing, but stay for the block on payments, and I will explain everything about this. And when I said it's a single lump sum, this means that this is an amount that is calculated for the whole project. Then stay for the block on payment, because we are going to explain exactly how it's going to be paid at the end of the project. Okay.
There is another question on the time scale of the project. Is that still 5 years? And the answer is yes. It's still 5 years.
Yes.
With nothing else changed in the schema of advanced grants.
It could be shorter if you wanted to.
Yes.
You know, if it was needed for the project, or possible to conduct the project in
Or
shorter, the maximum would be adapted accordingly.
It could be longer in case there are extensions, but this is still an exception, and it depends on special occasions. I have another question. Can costs for open access incur after the project period in lump sum projects? You have to budget for costs within the project period, but planned publications cost often incur at the end of the project. It's a tricky question.
It's a tricky question, but in fact, when the answer is simple, maybe it's not the one you are looking for, but when you are planning your budget, and we will see this also afterwards, you have to plan only what you have to put in the budget tables are only the costs that could be eligible for the project. So the cost that will be incurred during the duration of the project. Of course, then it's a global lump sum that you are going to get for everything. And once the project is done, we will pay for this the global lump sum. But the costs that are in the budget tables, the costs that are in the budget that you are planning, should be eligible cost.
Thank you very much. I have another question, but I think this is the perfect question to open to the next block. The question is, do you require much more budget details on submission? And let's start with the section on proposal submission. To go back to the slides.
So, indeed, the first thing to say here is the scientific parts of your proposal will remain the same as under the actual cost model. Part B1 and Part B2 will remain, will not change as a result of the move to the lump sum model. Where we did introduce some changes is in the budget forms, in order to have the budget information available in a more structured way to help the panel with their assessment. So in the budget table, we have now a column for person month. The budget narrative is now structured in different subsections. And each applicant will also have to submit an equipment depreciation table. This was not the case before, and we will see this in more detail in a minute. In addition, applicants, and by that we mean principal investigators and host institution, will also have to make a specific declaration about the cost estimates made. This is new for the lump sum model, and again we will say a few more words about this in a minute. All of this because of the importance of a well-done budget. But of course, we need to stress that within the limit of what makes sense for a 5-year frontier research project. So let's have a look at the new budget table. It remains almost identical as in the actual cost model, with the exception of 2 additional columns for each staff category under personnel costs. One to record person month, and a second column where the average monthly cost is automatically calculated. So applicants only have to fill out person month and the total amount. All other cost categories of the budget table remain the same. It might be that if you're following on a mobile device that you cannot see this table, but you will have a link to the slides, and you can also go to the submission portal and check it out directly there. Now, on the budget narrative, you might know that up to now this was one single section. It is now split in 6 subsections, 4 of which according to the usual cost categories, that is personnel cost, subcontracting, if applicable, purchase cost, and internally invoiced goods and services, if applicable. And then there's one box to describe and justify additional funding in case it is requested. And there's one box to describe funding from other sources that you benefit from for your project.
Okay, and now let's go to the equipment table depreciation. This table is new. We don't have this now in the actual cost model, in the budget, in the proposals. So we will have this. This table will allow you to provide an information that is well structured on the equipment. And this also will help you to calculate the cost that should be in the budget for the equipment, because it's an Excel table that have formulas inside, and will give a structured information to the panel's members, to the evaluators, to see very quickly which is the budget for this equipment. One thing that's important is the first call, the 2024 call is the first in lump sum. So for the moment, this table is an Excel table and is a mandatory attachment that should be uploaded during the submission. And you will have all the guidance provided on how to fill the table, but the table is self-explanatory. If you see the columns, maybe as Angela said, if you have little devices, you cannot see this now, but go to the portal and you will see this. Okay, and then we will go to see something very important, which is the how this budget in general, all those tables have to be filled. Okay, so which is important, and I already said this a little bit in the question before, is that when you fill in the budget, when you build the budget, you have to follow the usual accounting practices of your institution, and you have to fill in only eligible costs that are eligible. Be very careful with this. And we have a new declaration, which is called Declaration 10. Retain this in your brains, because this declaration, you are declaring that you are doing this. You are declaring, the host institution is declaring that you are following those accounting practices and eligibility of cost when you are building the budget on those tables. So this is very important to keep in mind when you are building the budget for the proposal.
Thank you very much. I think we can go to the questions on this part of the submission. We are receiving a lot of questions, but maybe they are also for blocks that we are going to explain later on. But I have to ask a little bit more details on this table, to be the depreciation table that is mandatory. What happens if the project of the applicants don't have equipment? It is a mandatory table. Do they have to upload it even empty?
As I told you, for the moment in 2024 call, this is an Excel table, and you have to upload the table even if you don't have equipment cost. Why? You will say this is not very logic. It is not, but we prefer to have this and to be sure that everybody is uploading the table when they have equipment cost. So like this, we are sure that there are not mistakes. So this is because it's compulsory. In any case, I think the system will block you if you are not doing this. So be careful, and when you are doing the proposal, if you have a blocking message, don't think it's a mistake. It's really you have to upload the table, even if there's not equipment cost.
Yes, and on that we have a viewer who says that they cannot find the Excel budget table to fill in the portal, and I think it's in one of the annexes. But maybe this is something that we can add a link later on, so to make it clear. So I don't remember which number of annex, but it is in the annexes. And if you download the templates for the submission forms, you will see that this is one of the tables that is there. We have a few questions on the single work package. It's not a single work package, it's a single lump sum. But does it mean that we have to organize our project in a single work package? How does it work?
No, so formally, yes, indeed. It is a single lump sum work package. It is a single work package, the entire, that corresponds to the entire ERC project in lump sum terms. But we said very clearly that applicants can continue to structure their project as they wish. So if you were going to have work packages, you can still have work packages, and this will be considered scientific work packages. So there should be no change in the way that you structure or plan your project in that respect because of the move to the lump sum model.
So we can have scientific organization, whatever work packages
like it
that
is
we
now.
want.
You don't have to have work packages. You don't have to, but you can do. You have the flexibility to do it as it is best for your project.
So not changing the way the proposals are written now.
Doesn't need to be a change in how you think about or structure your project.
So everything will be taken at the end, including the additional budget, and made a single lump sum.
That's and don't worry, you will have a single lump sum for the whole project.
Okay, then there is another question, because this single lump sum is per beneficiary, and we have a question on multi-beneficiary projects, multi-beneficiary grants. The lump sum is attributed to the whole project, and does the PI, can the PI change during the execution of the project the attribution of budget to the beneficiaries? I think there are several options here.
No. In fact, we will have a lump sum per beneficiary. So if we want to change the attribution of the lump sum during the lifetime of the project, it has to be explained, and this is an amendment. Should be through an amendment. Very well explained, because we have done an evaluation on that, so very well explained why we are doing this, and should be done through an amendment.
So it's a single lump sum per beneficiary and per the whole length of the project.
Yeah, yes.
Then there is another question on the submission, and somebody says, one of the viewers, no timesheets, but you ask for person months calculation on the submission system. Why?
Of course, because we have to know which are the resources you are planning for the activities you are going to do. We need to know, the evaluators need to know which are the resources, how are you going to spend this money. So a very logic budget and how are you going to do this. And of course, we need to know which is the workforce you need for this.
Yeah, so the budget needs to be evaluated by the panel, and we will talk about budget assessment and the evaluation, notably of personnel costs by the panel in a little bit.
And also the details on the science, because there are other questions saying we don't need to provide details for each sub-work package, research direction, research acts with specific tasks. And yes, the answer is yes.
It does not change.
This doesn't change.
Yes, I mean, in your proposal, you explain what you want to do, and you need to provide enough information for the panel to understand what your project is about and to be able to evaluate it. And the budget needs to fit the work that you're proposing to do. So that's what the panel will be looking at. They will be looking at whether the budget, the overall budget, is appropriate for this project, and then they will also look at cost estimates and see whether they are reasonable and non-excessive. We will talk about this in a bit.
Yes, and also something important to say. Here is a webinar for lump sum, and we are focusing on this. But Angela, you can tell them clearly the focus on the evaluation, and we will see this in the following point, is on the science. So this is what the panels are going to evaluate. Explain well this as you do today. This is something that is complementary. It's very important because it's to set up the lump sum for the project, but don't forget that the most important in the proposal is the science.
Absolutely, and that it's a perfect transition to the next section, which is on the evaluation. Once the proposal is submitted, how will it be evaluated? Angela, I think you can, the slides are for you.
Okay, so indeed. We mentioned before that the evaluation criteria do not change. And this is what Mila just also stressed. The focus of the evaluation remains on the scientific merits of the proposal. It is scientific excellence only, there's no change there. But the role of the panel in step 2 also includes an assessment of the cost estimates to confirm that the requested grant is in line with the work proposed, reasonable and non-excessive. And in addition, we will also conduct an eligibility check to make sure that costs are all eligible. And here, the same eligibility conditions apply then for the actual cost model. Then a change compared to the actual cost model applies to the personnel cost assessment. So under lump sums for personnel costs, the panel will not only assess the resource, that is the number of staff, but they will also look at the related cost. For that, panels will have access to historical ERC personnel cost data to serve as a benchmark. And applicants, this ERC data is available on our website, so applicants can have access to this, not to align, because the idea is not that you have to align with the historical data when you plan for your personnel cost. No, instead you should plan and request what you think that you will incur. So what you expect to have as personnel cost is what you should put as cost estimates in your budget section. but the historical data will help you identify whether the costs that you will incur and you propose and you plan, whether they are in line with what is typically paid in your country and for that staff category. And if you find that you are not aligned, it will help you to provide, it will be a good idea for you to provide some explanation of why this is. It is understood that personnel costs increase over time. They're expected to increase over time, and therefore personnel costs, even if significantly higher than the historical data, can be acceptable if they are justified. For example, by the nature of the tasks, by the need for senior or highly qualified staff, or significant increases in personnel costs due to inflation or other reasons.
Then for more details.
Yes, because now we are going to tell you, we have this ERC historical personnel cost data in a tool that you can use. It's available for applicants and will be available also for panel members. This tool is very similar to Horizon Dashboard that you may be aware of, but there are some differences. One is our data are the data of ERC of the last years. And then also because it's displayed by country and by staff category. We have had a lot of comments from stakeholders for host institutions mainly that were asking us, please, by staff category, because this is the way we are building the budget for ERC. So this is because your tool for historical personnel cost data in ERC is per category and per country. And you will see now in this slide, in the following one, maybe you don't see very well. Again, we say go to the tool. You will see this very well. Also, if you display the slide in your computer instead of in the little devices, you will see better. But go to the tool and you can play with this. And this is what you will get. So in this tool, you will have in the left side, you will have the percentile, some of the percentiles, the 20%, the 50%, and the 80% percentile. As Angela said, this is something that you can see that can help you to see how to justify better your personal cost. But you don't have to follow this. What you have to follow, and we insist a lot on this, is your own accounting practices and your own personal cost grid. So now for questions, Josefina, maybe?
Yes, let's go to questions. And actually, I see that there are questions that are already related to what you just said. There is a question asking our actual salary rates for postdocs, because also depends on the category. In some categories can be higher than others. For the postdocs in this particular institution are above 80% of the rates in the Advanced Grants dashboard. What kind of justification do you expect, except the one that those are our actual current salary rates?
I think it's a very good justification. In most of the cases, it's a very good justification. Why? Because you have very clear salary or personal cost grid in your institutions. We can have some minor cases where they do not have this personal cost grid, but in most of our host institutions, there are universities, research center. This is enough justification, but put it very clearly in the proposal. When you do the justification, you say this is what it is in our personal cost grid. It's according to our actual payments.
Or if there is an exception, then it should be justified because there is a bonus for a special contract that is done.
Yes, we used to call this bonus in FP7.
Yeah.
But
we don't call it bonus anymore.
But okay, it's additional remuneration, but okay, it's the same. You can have this, of course, but I said this from the beginning. You have to follow the eligibility conditions. So this is acceptable on the conditions that you have very well spelled out you have this in the annotated grant agreement if you want for the actual cost. But I can already tell you that should be a general practice of your institution for the bonus, for example, and also that is not unique for the ERC or for the European project. It's something that you do normally. You give this kind of bonus to the scientists when they participate in a project. But you have this very well specified, always following the eligible cost rules and your own practices. And it's okay. If you do this, the budget is perfect.
So to summarize, do applicants need to build their personnel cost budget according to the data in this historical dashboard?
No, of course not. But it's a help to well developed, as Angela said, the justification. To see, here we are really above the percentiles, so let's put a justification because it's better for the panel members to know.
But the justification, like this is what we typically pay postdocs this year, at this time point, is sufficient. And I would also like to add a point for in general, our panels will not start to micromanage the budget or the personnel cost just because we have moved to a lump sum model. So this is a general principle that we brief our panels.
Yes, tell me more about that. There is a question asking, will panel and expert evaluators be instructed to go through the proposed budget details? So it's about how they will be instructed to do this.
No, as we said, the focus of the evaluation will remain on the scientific merits of the proposal. But experts do also look at the budget of the proposal. In one of the evaluation questions, resources is also part of that question. So they might even make a comment already about this before they come to the panel meeting in Brussels. And it might be discussed during the discussions. But mostly the details of the budget will be looked at by experts once the rank list has been established. And then they will, but our panels do that already now in the actual cost model. Under lump sums, this step of assessment of the budget has an increased importance, because remember, there's no additional checks on costs anymore afterwards during the lifetime of the project. But at the ERC, the level of detail that is provided by most applicants in proposals is often already quite detailed and sufficient for even this new financial model. And also the panels were already looking at the budget in detail. So there's a certain importance to that step now under the lump sum model, but applicants should not get too concerned about. The message really is plan your budget according to what you think you need, and experts will understand and will make their assessment of the proposal based on
science.
How convincing that is. So the more you stay to what you actually in reality expect to need, the more convincing your proposal will be.
I have another question on personal cost. This is a hot topic today, and it's ERC Advanced Grant candidates are usually very high-level scientists, so probably they have salaries above the average. How is this taken into account when looking at the dashboard averages? And yes, what are these? I know what is going to be the answer.
It's the same, but when you go to the dashboard, you will have this per country and per staff category. So you will have the comparison with other PIs that are advanced PIs. This is the comparison that you have in the tool. So it's not comparing postdocs with principal investigators. It's advanced principal investigators with advanced principal investigators in the same country.
And it's actually one of the reasons why we decided to go for our own historical data, because in that way we could display PI salary, personnel costs of principal investigators of ERC grants, and which is not possible in the Commission data. So in our personnel cost, historical personnel cost data in that tool, the data for the PIs is only the one from advanced grantees, whereas the data for other staff categories like postdocs or senior staff comes from all three main grant schemes, starting, consolidator, and advanced. But the PI, the principal investigator data, is really only from advanced ERC grantees.
So we are expecting some increases because of inflation. There is another question about the national grids that can change, but this is something that can be also checked, and we are aware of. But the PIs are compared with PIs, advanced grant PIs for the last 5 years. So, but this leaves another problem, and is what happens, and this is another question that we have here, if I find the question, when we don't have enough data on a country or in a cost category to display data.
But it's true that we have some countries, very few, that we do not have enough data, and you don't have this in our tool. You don't have to be worried, because as Angela and me, we are repeating all the time, is what you have to put in your budget is what you have in your real salary or personal cost grid of your institution, what is in your practices. You have to put this, you explain this, and it is enough. The panels will understand this.
Yeah,
it's very few staff categories for a few countries where we do not have data, and in those cases the panel will have to do without.
Yeah, so the question was, will evaluators take into account that they did not have access to the data? Well,
yeah,
of course.
Of course.
This can always be checked with the host institution. Also, in cases of host institutions, what happens, this data is per country. What happens in one host institution has higher salaries than the average in that country. This can also be checked.
This can also be checked, okay. And remember that this declaration 10 that I said, that when you are signing the proposal, you are saying that the budget is done according to the principles of the host institution.
So after this step of checking the budget, what will happen if the panel considers that the project fulfills the excellent criteria, but the budget is not it's very nice, well dimensioned? It's a very nice way to say it. What happens?
Well, first I have to say, Angela, is this for the science, they don't have to worry, because they will see this science separately. If it is excellent, they will be in the ranking list, in the same place. Even if the budget is not well built, they will be in the ranking. Now, if the budget is not very good, maybe the panels have some issues and may have some concerns.
I think the first thing they will do is they would ask a question about it in the interview, and then based on the justifications or explanations provided, they might or might not consider to implement a cut for a certain cost.
As they do now.
As they do now. They can implement a cut as they do now, but the position in the ranking list won't change.
Another question, can the budget be asked to be revised based on the evaluation due to lack of proper justification on, for example, the personnel cost? Well, revised, I understand the lack of proper justification may, how would you do that?
No,
the lack question, no?
It could be cut, it could be flagged to check with host institution, for example.
Yes, but take into account that we can check with host institution if they have followed their own rules for the personnel cost grid, for example, but we are not going to reassess the resources or even the rationality of the cost. This is really for the panel. So if the panel thinks that the resources are not justified, too many postdocs, and they cut. We are not going to review this. The only thing they can tell us is seems very high. Please check with the host institution if this is really in their personal cost grid, and if it is really when they sign declaration, then they did not a mistake, for example. But the evaluation is for the evaluators.
Thank you. I think we have completed more or less this section, and I propose you to go to the future. So, to you all, imagine that you have successfully submitted an advanced grants proposal and that you have successfully passed the evaluation. Now what? Now you have to implement the project. What
so
about
let's
this?
go to the implementation of the project. So what we are going to do? Well, first of all, we go for the grant preparation. In the grant preparation, we will do more or less what we do today during the grant preparation of the actual costs. So we are going to ensure that everything complies with the rules, that everything, that is very clear who does what, because in lump sum, afterwards, it is not important, the cost, we will see this, but who does what is always important. So we will check if there's subcontracting that is not very well explained in the narrative, if there are, for example, people that are working in another third party, that if we have affiliated entities that are working for the project, all these, we are going to put this in legal terms to be very clear in contractual terms, and we are going to sign the grant agreement. But something very important which is different here is that the budget table that is in the proposal won't be included anymore in the grant agreement. So we will delete it. After evaluation is only to evaluate if the resources are needed by the evaluators, not by us, needed, and the costs are reasonable. Once it is evaluated, the budget table disappears, and we will have this single lump sum in the grant agreement. Okay. Then, of course, amendments. Amendments will be there if needed, as today. Deviations are possible, and if there's a deviation, they tell us, and we will see if we have to do an amendment, or if it's a little deviation that we do not need. And now we go for what you were waiting, that is the payments, that is very important, and it has very good news. Some of you know already, I'm sure, but others not. We are going to pay already 80% pre-financing at the beginning. When we sign the grant agreement, I think it's 30 days later, you will receive this, maximum 30 days, you will receive this 80% of pre-financing. Okay, then we will have, as today, a scientific mid-term report to assess the progress of the project, to see the deviations, is there when we see if we need an amendment or we don't need an amendment, how you are doing, all these kind of things. But this mid-term report won't be associated to a payment. You have already paid 80% at the beginning of the project, and this cash flow should stay like this till the end. At the end of the project, there will be a final report, a scientific assessment, and at that moment, yes, the scientific assessment, the final report will be linked to a payment, and we will pay the balance at the final payment. Okay, and now Angela is going to tell us for the final reporting and payment.
So remember what this example of the vaccine candidate we had before. So the work is the lump sum is paid when the work is completed. So lump sums are fully paid when all the work has been carried out as described in the description of action. And also if all essential tasks have been completed, and or if equivalent tasks have been carried out, and or if deviations have been duly justified. So this means that if one of these conditions is met, 100% completion can be requested or should be requested, and hence 100% payment. And this is irrespective of results obtained or objectives achieved. In case where a project could not be conducted as planned, for example, due to an early termination because the PI, the principal investigator, gave up his research lab in Europe and moved to the US, the PI can declare partial completion. And then the lump sum would be paid in line with the degree of completion as declared by the principal investigator and the host institution and as accepted by us.
And then, which will be the ex post controls? So there's no cost statement, we have said, so there's no financial audits and no certificates on financial statements. This disappeared, but we could have, of course, technical review that are also possible today in the actual cost model. So these technical reviews will stay only on proper implementation, and if we do this technical review on proper implementation, of course we are going to check also the compliance with some non-financial obligations, like for example ethics, procurement procedures. These kind of things can be checked during this ex post controls, but not financial records. So you don't have to keep financial records anymore for us, for your institution, of course, but with other rules probably. And then what you have to keep is always the technical documents. The publication are published, but they are there. They will serve us for this kind of reviews. If you have prototypes, if there's deliverables that they are not compulsory, but if they are deliverables that you have, of course, this is something that you show us, and all the documentation that is required by good research practices. And we go for questions again.
Thank you. Yes, we go for questions. And I have one directly related to what you just said. And there's a question asking, will there be more technical audits for ERC Advanced Grants lump sum projects as there will not be any financial audits? So no financial audits. Are we expecting more technical reviews?
In principle, no. ERC is already doing technical reviews. Maybe you don't know because your project has not been reviewed before, but we do this from time to time, and we will continue to do this when we see that there's something that needs to be reviewed.
Yes, of course, indeed. If we see that something is not going well with the project based on our interactions with the principal investigator, based on maybe the midterm report or the final report, then of course we would want to know what's going on. But this does not happen very often, of course.
But don't be afraid either of the technical reviews, because if you can justify your work, it's maybe we have not understood simply.
And how will the ERC assess that the grantee is carrying out the work? This obligation of means, how is it going to be assessed? It was already mentioned, but let me
tell
us more.
There's the scientific reporting. There's a midterm and a final scientific report, and in these reports, applicants describe what they have done according to the original work plan. They also describe where they have been facing challenges. And what they have perhaps done instead. This is all part of the reporting. They will also submit their publications, conference proceedings, and all sorts of other output, communication activities, and all these sorts of outputs will be looked at, similar to now. And this is how they will report, and we will, based on what we can see as outputs, we will make that assessment.
And I have to say that it's not different from the actual cost model, because today when we pay an actual cost model, we don't pay only because you have incurred the cost. It's because the work has been done. Is the first condition. So now the only thing is that only the first condition stays, but it's the same.
Yes, even now, that's what we do in the scientific department. When we get the final report, we look at how the project has been doing. We try to understand what the challenges are, not to penalize the PI, but to understand and to be able to support both at midterm and at the final report stage, but also whenever there's a problem in between. So it's from that point of view, we will be looking at the same signs of a successful project than we do now.
And as you said, this is frontier research, so deviations and changes are expected and perfectly justifiable. But I have a question saying, but additional funding is not usually subject to the same flexibility. How is it checked in case of lump sums?
So additional funding in lump sum can be requested in addition to the normal maximum grant amount. So in this case, the 2.5 million for the exact same four categories, either startup costs or major equipment or access to large facilities or major experimental and fieldwork costs, excluding personnel costs. And it will also be assessed in the same way by the panel. So it needs to be needed for this project and well justified, and the panel will have a careful look at this. Then during the course of the project, there's one full lump sum, and then deviations are possible. And if there is a deviation to the original work plan, then this will have to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. And can be acceptable if the original award decision is not called into question, and this includes also additional funding.
So basically not looking at the cost or at the cost categories anymore, but at the activities that justified this additional funding.
Yes.
I have another question about how is the PI's time commitment checked without a timesheet?
Okay, what we are thinking, and we have already agreed with our Central Legal Services, is that we will ask for one declaration in the middle of the project with a midterm report, and another declaration at the end of the project on the percentage of time that they have dedicated to the project. It's a declaration in the same way as the timesheets are declarations. But it's simpler because it's only twice, and for the whole period. Well, for the whole period in the middle and for the whole project at the end. And so they have to declare this, and they have to declare also that they have been in Europe for at least 50% of the time. For advanced, the time commitment is at least 30%, but sometimes they say in the proposal that they are going to work more, and this is in the grant agreement, so they have to declare that they have worked at least the percentage that they have put into the grant agreement.
And this declaration comes at both times, so midterm and final.
And final only.
Because of course it's the average. Maybe at midterm because there is a long stay outside Europe and the average is lower, it can be compensated in the second part of the project.
Yes, and what we ask already today in our reporting, when this happens, they have to explain us why this happened and how are they going to catch up in the future.
And I think it's going to be the last question that we are going to take before going to the wrap-up, unless there is some important thing from our colleagues, a message. In case of portability during the grant implementation, and I want both views from both of you, how will the remainder of the budget be transferred? How will it be calculated to be transferred?
Okay, as today, and this is not a big difference, when there's a portability, there's always an agreement, that is a trilateral agreement between the principal investigator, the former host institution, and the future host institution. So they agree, and they will see we have done this, this is the amount for that part that has already been done, and the host institution and the principal investigators agreed to finish the project with the remaining amount. How we do this technically, there are several ways, because sometimes they remain in the project, in the grant agreement, sometimes they are leaving the grant agreement, we do a termination, depends on the case, but in any case, the part of the pre-financing that is not used or has to be transferred to the new host institution will be transferred directly by the former. But this does not change what we are doing today.
But how we calculate it, it is going to be some scientific assessment.
I think what Mila said is the only thing. I mean, we will have to see on a case-by-case basis. Most cases, this is not necessarily a difficult situation. Normally, the PI, who is the lead of his project, will make a certain assessment of how much of the project has been conducted under the former host institution and how much he intends to conduct at the new host institution, and he will present this to both host institutions, and they should come to an agreement. They will have to agree in these cases. If there are difficulties, maybe we will be there to support the PI if needed. But this is how it is. They will have to agree on how the lump sum is split between the former and the new host institution.
Thank you. I still have something to wrap up because these are complementary questions. Well, the question is, if the objectives have not been achieved because the research has not gone in the way you foresee, can the funding be reduced? And complementary to that, if the project is partially completed, the host institution will not receive the 20% of the payment, but can also be some recovering from the rest. But I would like you to, we have said it already, but to differentiate between these two things, because it's different, not completing the project or not achieving the objectives.
No, this is first for Angela, and then I will come with the story of pre-financing, final payment,
yes,
and in case of recovery. But first, is the assessment that she has explained.
Yes. And that's also what we would expect that applicants should be doing. Huh? If they submit their final report, they should, if they have worked towards the objectives of the project during the entire 5 years, even if it hasn't worked out as they initially planned, they should request 100% completion, and we will assess this and we will pay 100%. If they have had an early termination, for example, if the PI after 2.5 years decides that he gives up and moves to the States, then of course there might be some recovery that will have to be requested back from the host institution because the project the work was not done and the project was not completed. And maybe here Mila wants to add to that.
I would like to add that good explanations are always welcome. Yes. It's the best. It's the best to succeed. So even when Angela said, okay, we will pay 100%, even if you have done other activities not exactly described, please justify why and how. And when it is very important, the deviations come first to the scientific officer. We will see this first, and we can do an amendment also.
If necessary.
We will study the situation. So each situation, my advice, explain well, because we will find a solution. Then, if at the end we cannot find a solution because whatever, they have gone to the States or whatever other reason the project has not been done 100%, what happened? Of course, we have given a pre-financing of 80%. If they have achieved, I invented 90%, we will pay the 10%. If they have achieved 70% because they went to the States before, of course we are going to recover this 10% of difference. So the 80% is a pre-financing, and as today, when it is not justified, now with other means, we have to recover the part of the pre-financing that has not been justified. And this is what we will do.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the conclusion slide. I think this could be the end of this webinar. The next slide, please.
So what do we expect? We think really that this will be a major reduction of administrative burden for all of you. Why? Because we are removing all obligations on cost reporting, including all the obligation of personnel cost, no more timesheets or other documents supporting actual cost incurred, and no more financial audit. So all this is a big package, and we think it's a very big administrative simplification. Still, the science has to be done as today. And then?
Yes, and finally the timeline that you see, the call. Well, you will find the links here in the description of the YouTube channel. There is also a functional mailbox to ask Advanced Grants 24. We are super happy to answer also personalized questions. Our colleagues will be there for the whole summer answering your questions, because the deadline, the call deadline, is the 29th of August 2024. And we plan to do a second webinar, a more hands-on webinar that we will open registration. It will be in another platform, so it can be more interactive, 10 days before the end, the call ending, the call deadline, on the 19th of August. For those of you who are spending the summer writing a grant, you can still connect and ask some practical questions. So we will be happy to answer. We will answer also in written form the questions that have been raised here in this webinar. But before leaving, I would like to wrap up with a short question to both of you. What main message do you want the viewers to take home? Who wants to start?
Who wants to start?
You start. You can start.
So my key take-home message for you would be to applicants: do not change the way you imagine your future groundbreaking and ambitious ERC project.
And my message, as I'm more in the legal and financial part, I will say, when you build the budget, that should be reasonable, of course, see this, but follow your own accounting principles, the own accounting principles of the institutions for everything, for personnel costs, for purchase of equipment, so on. Follow this, because you have to do this, and don't put ineligible costs either. They are peanuts, eligible costs, so ineligible costs, because any cost that is related to the project in principle is eligible. So be careful with this, and it will be perfect.
Thank you very much. Goodbye to all the viewers. We had more than 900 people following this webinar from sunny Brussels. Goodbye, have a nice day and a good summer.